What is up, guys? Psychotic Maniac here, and I want to give you guys a little warning because some of these stories may make you uncomfortable, and if they do, please feel free to skip to the next story. I want to give you guys a bigger warning for the last story because this one deals with sensitive topics such as sexual assault on a minor and sexual activities with minors in general. It also has mentions of violence, rape, incest, and bestiality. So I just want to give you guys this warning before you guys jump into this video, to avoid any lashback from you guys or the community or YouTube in general. Now, sit back, relax. It's time to get psychotic. I'm generally new to Reddit, but have been following Let's Not Meet for a few months now, and just dying, not really, to share some of my experiences, so I finally caved in and made an account. So, here's my story. A little prelude. This is not one of the scariest things to have happened to me. I grew up in the South Bronx. Not the best area, so I obviously had a few moments growing up that were not so good. But the tales of risky encounters with junkies and creeps are for another day. I'm smart now, but back then, not so much. So, this particular story strangely begins in the 5th grade, although the scary part doesn't come in until literally years after. I was 10, pudgy, dorky, and painfully shy. Understandably so, I had just been transferred into regular classes, as I had spent my previous years in bilingual education. When you spend most of your time speaking Spanish and only having Hispanic friends, it is jarring to suddenly be placed out of your comfort zone. All of my old friends still sit together, and suddenly I couldn't hang out with them as my lunch table, room number, and assigned area for recess were completely different. I was alone, completely and utterly friendless, until 2 girls from my new class suddenly befriended me and took me under their wings. Olive was nice, super nice. I regret not keeping in touch with her once I went on to middle school. She came from a really bad background, but then again, most of us did too. But she was always smiling and willing to explain things that I didn't understand. Grace was nice, but really snarky at times, even to Olive, who was her best friend forever. She would call both Olive and I poor for not having a cell phone. Although, hello, these were the early 2000s, cell phones still weren't that common with the youngins. Or ugly as a weird endearment. She would let loose a maniacal laughter when she thought something was funny, grasping her purple glasses to her face and do a full body wiggle. These would often make me and Olive giggle because it seemed so fake, like a little show she did for us to make us laugh. Looking back on it now, it should have been a sign that she wasn't a really sane person, but the friendship persisted. This all came to a weird impulse one day when Olive stopped showing up to school. Grace and her were in an on and off stage, where one day they were best friends, the other times they couldn't be in the same room and hated each other. I was always in the middle of these fights, and was often told to pick a side. In the week of no Olive, Grace and I were playing tag outside during recess. Grace was chasing me, and I was momentarily distracted because I saw a group of my old friends. I yelled a quick timeout, and looking at it now, I feel like she should have heard me, but she continued running straight at me. Suddenly, she tackled me to the floor, and this is where my memory gets a bit foggy because a floor made out of pure concrete and gravel plus no time to brace myself equals bad stuff. I remember not moving for a while, and a school aide pushing Grace out of the way to lift me up as I started to sob and babble in Spanish wanting my mom. The next thing I know, my grandmother, who barely speaks a lick of English, was rushing into the nurse's room, yelling that no one should ever put a packet of ice on a head wound. That's what the nurse did to stop the blood. And crying because the back of my shirt was streaked with blood. It apparently looked a lot worse than it was, but at the time, this was some serious shit. So I was sent on my way with my grandmother to the emergency room. Questions were thrown at me by my frantic parents when they were told by my grandmother where I was. Who did this to you? Are you being bullied? Don't be scared, no one will be mad. Tell us who it was, they will get expelled. But in my tiny child brain, Grace was my friend. She didn't mean anything. It was an accident. And so nothing was done. I went back to school. Grace said sorry and warned me to pay more attention next time we were playing together. Olive eventually came back. She now lived with her grandmother as her parents were unfit to take care of her. And the 5th grade eventually came to a close. We graduated. We went to the same middle school, but I was again separated as I was placed into gifted and talented rather than general ed. I thought myself a little genius, but I really just had a weird form of a tiger dad I was scared of displeasing. Middle school was a rough time for me. I was an emo kid. I was basically at the end of the nerdy totem pole. I was weird, but I made good friends. Many who again I lost when I decided I wanted out of Bronx for high school. One girl in particular, named Michelle, was such a cool girl, but also really messed up. She will come in with cuts on her wrist, not showing up at school for weeks at a time, ran away once, and was sent to a mental institution for attempted suicide. But she was what I considered my best friend during my 3 awkward years. And so when I went to high school, separated from my tight-knit group, I'm maintaining contact with her the most, sporadically, but still a lot more than the rest of my friends. Why is she mentioned in this story? Am I just writing a long memoir about my life? No, it all comes together soon. In one of my first days of high school, I was still learning how to take the train by myself, so I was always really concentrated on where I was going instead of my surroundings. When I was waiting to get off the train, I suddenly felt a tug on my arm, and turned around to see that dimply face of Grace with her bright pink glasses. I was surprised, and must have looked in shock because her first words were, "Don't you remember me? Or can't you talk?" She laughed, and I laughed alongside with her too, not really knowing what to say. It was weird. I hadn't seen her in 4 years, but I was her friend at one point, so I wanted to be nice. She walked with me all the way to the front of my apartment building, updating me on how she didn't talk to that stupid bitch Olive anymore because she didn't like her style. Bragged about her hot older boyfriend who was in a gang, and I generally thought that she was joking or at least hyping herself up. I walked with my brand new cell phone in my hand, a blue Sidekick ID with a flip keyboard that was all the rage, and she immediately honed in on my hand as we got to the front of my building. "Oh, got a cell phone now, ugly?" I was into sarcasm. I was a crappy teenager, okay? So I didn't react to her taunt and just said, "Yeah, you jealous?" and laughed it off. She asked for my number to keep in touch, but didn't give me her number in return, just said that she would text me to catch up and hang out. Fine, cool, whatever. I didn't think much of it. That very day, I was doing homework on my bed. My older sister hogging the computer with her headphones in, ignoring my chatter. When my phone started to ring, I saw the jumble of numbers, and although I know it's unknown, still picked up the phone with a questioning, "Hello?" What I was met with was the worst toe-curling scream in my life that nearly blew out my ear. It was horrible. It sounded like the devil himself torturing a woman, and she was screaming murder. It was so loud that even my sister, with her headphones, jumped into the air and turned around to see me disconnect the call. We both were shaken, but she didn't have time to ask me if I was okay because the cell phone began to ring again. I saw the same number and stupidly picked up the phone again. My sister calling my mother over to say that we might be overhearing some murder or something. We watched a lot of CSI, okay? The call connected and I put on my bravest voice. Who is this? The voice on the other end sounded super high-pitched and just giggled for a while, like I was making the funniest joke. Murphy Taco! It's you, right? The voice said. Yeah, why are you calling me? I responded. I know where you live! It sing-songed at me. So? I was filled with false bravado. Who are you? You go to this school and take the train at this stop? It just continued to sound really high-pitched, almost screechy. And what is the point? I was so sarcastic, everyone in my family was in the room at this point. Tomorrow morning! The voice suddenly went from really high-pitched and giggly sing-song to that raw throat scream I heard in the first call. I'm going to fucking put you into the train tracks and kill you! If you don't die, I'll find you until you die! Die! Die, you stupid bitch! Why don't you die? My father grabbed the phone from my hand. Who the fuck are you? I'm going to call the police. If you touch my daughter, I'm going to... He didn't get to finish because the call suddenly disconnected. He took my phone and immediately took it to the precinct we live nearby. Nothing could be done. I didn't know who called me, and my life wasn't in real danger, so what could be done? A police officer was already stationed to patrol the train station anyway. My father was assured I would be fine. And I really was. But I live in a constant state of fear in the early mornings when I would wake up to go to school. My parents actually started walking me to the train and picking me up as if I was a child who needed their hand held. But I appreciate it nonetheless. There's only a few things that New Yorkers are afraid of, and falling into the train tracks to a horrible death is one of them, and a bedbug or a rat infestation is a close second. A few months later, I got a text from my good old buddy Michelle saying, "Hey, do you know a girl named Grace?" I typed out an affirmative and asked how she knew her. What a weird coincidence, I thought. She's fucking crazy, my friend texted back. I'm transferring schools after this year, and I hope I never see her. I was honestly confused. What did Michelle mean? She got into a fight a couple days ago and literally tore this girl's ears off. The next text came in. She said you were mean to her in elementary school, but that's shit. You're not a mean person. I said I didn't believe her. She said I better because I would regret it. Suddenly, it all clicked. The voice on the call, it definitely sounded like Grace's voice if possessed by a demon, or she had just modified her voice. But why would she do that? I warned Michelle about what I thought she did to me, and she agreed that it was possibly her. But to this day, I can't possibly imagine what I must have done to her to do that. The police had written it off as a bad prank. But how did she know that Michelle was my friend to start talking to her about how she knew me? It still boggles my mind, and I still refuse to stand at the edge of the platform to take the train because of that phone call. So, to the end of this incredibly long post, Grace, let's never meet again. You scared the hell out of me. A couple of years ago, I worked at a spa which was located in a fairly safe neighborhood on the ground floor of a residential building. It had large bright windows, security cameras, and we even had a police precinct diagonally from us, as well as a few stores on the same block that closed around the same time, 10 p.m. I usually locked the doors when I let all the employees leave for the day, and would finish counting the money/receipts. This particular day, the last of the employees had left, and I did not lock the door as I was shutting down my computer and cleaning up for the next workday. A gentleman who was clearly intoxicated came in with an open beer bottle in his hand and asked if he could use the restroom. I told him that we were closed from behind my desk, and let him know that there was a public restroom at the nearby Starbucks. He swayed in his spot, spilling beer on the floor. He paused to tell me that I was pretty. I politely asked him to leave the premises. He raised the volume of his voice and said, I am going to kiss you. I calmly asked him if he needed me to call someone to pick him up as he was visibly drunk. His words slurred. I did not understand him. He just stood there staring at me. I had a hammer about 3 feet away from me. I thought about going for it. And I thought about the police officers and our friendly neighbors who often stop by to check in, and wished that they would have in that moment. And how often the owner of the spa checked the camera's live feed. But no one came to my rescue. I was all alone with this drunkard, and I did not know what his intentions were. I asked him one more time to leave. He threw his beer on the floor, shattering the glass. He then exited the premises. I ran over and locked the door immediately. Spent the next half hour cleaning up the mess and wondering if I should have reacted differently. I quit my job shortly after. This is a short story about something that happened to me over the summer. It was a weekday, maybe around 1 or 2 p.m. It was warm out and the sun was shining. I was running errands all day and was on my way home when I cut through an alley. It was 1 block long. A stranger, 30s to 40s, approached me from behind and said, "Good morning. Beautiful day we're having today." I replied, "Sure." He then introduced himself with his first name. I did not respond. He made a comment about the dress that I was wearing. He said, "I like your dress. It looks very nice on you." I did not respond. He then asked where I was going. "We are almost at the end of the block now." I say, "I'm meeting my husband for lunch, and I will pick up my children from a school in a bit." He then said, "Lucky guy, lucky kids. I will not bother you anymore. Have a good day." I am relieved. But then, out of nowhere, he hugs me. I was in shock. I was unnervingly calm. Too calm. For sure, I would be the first to die in any chaotic/apocalyptic situation. I do not remember what he looked like, and I would not recognize him if I saw him again. But yeah, let's not meet again. I met this guy online about 8 years ago now, on an online avatar chat simulator type thing called IMVU. Even back then, it was mostly used by children lying about their age, and creepy older people looking to get it on in the virtual space. My best friend Jasmine and I actively used this app/game/whatever when we were both about 14 years old. I met this man by a random chance, as IMVU used to have a feature where you could be connected to a random stranger to chat with. I don't remember much about our first meeting, other than he was very calm and collected, as well as extremely suave and charming. He told us his name was Wesley. I introduced myself, and we established that we lived very close to one another, just a few towns away. He told me that he was 20. I told him I was 18. He obviously knew that that was a lie. I offered to introduce him to Jasmine, as we talked about and shared everything at the time. He was very excited by this. Jasmine also claimed to be 18. The three of us chatted for a bit in cyberspace, but quickly our new friend proposed that we all get in a three-way call together on the phone. Jasmine and I were already on the phone together as we were chatting with Wesley, and I remember both of us squealing like the little teenage girls we were. We both were very charmed by this mysterious older man who was making flirtatious comments at both of us, and we quickly dialed him into our call. The three of us talked for a few hours that night. If it wasn't quickly obvious to him that we were not 18 before then, it would have become abundantly clear then. But still, he continued making flirtatious comments directed at both of us, and we were smitten. Jasmine and I were not the most popular or conventionally attractive kids, so we ate up all the attention. Fast forward to some time later. Jasmine and I are both frequently talking to this guy, both together and while apart. We migrated to Skype for chatting. No calling or video though, and we still frequently did our three-way calls. Jasmine and I were getting kinda competitive over this guy as we both liked him, and we started fighting occasionally over who could have him. We sent him a photo of the two of us together, again further cementing to him that we were obviously way underage, and we received a photo of him. He was very skinny, had long curly hair, looked very greasy, and was wearing sunglasses inside. Wesley was still making inappropriate comments towards the both of us, but it never crossed the line, until one fateful night. Jasmine needed to go to bed and left our three-way call, so Wesley and I were left alone. Wesley made a comment towards me saying that he always thought that I was prettier than Jasmine, but not to tell her that he'd said that. This made me feel like I was victorious in this weird battle that Jasmine and I were waging. But the compliment came with a condition. The way he worded it was basically that he knew that I was better than Jasmine because he knew that I would do things with him that Jasmine was too afraid to do. Sexual things. The way he worded it was basically that he knew that I was better than Jasmine because he knew that I would do things with him that Jasmine was too afraid to do. Sexual things. Me, being a very tried-hard teenager who was trying to one-up my friend, of course said yes to this. That was the first night he coerced me into having phone sex with him. Later on, I had found out that he actually approached Jasmine with this proposition first, and she'd also complied, but didn't tell me about it until a while after. One-on-one phone sex with both of us, then one day, a few weeks later, turned into three-way phone sex with both of us. After that point, he approached us both together and asked if we would both be his, a compromise, no more fighting. We'd shared him. We agreed, and after we did, things only grew more hostile between Jasmine and I behind the scenes. But in front of him, he told us that we needed to behave. As time went on, and we'd become more acquainted with one another sexually, his requests and demands of the two of us started growing more perverted, vulgar, and disgusting. With the two of us together, he started delving into BDSM and violence, talking about beating us. With me privately, he started talking about incest and trying to coerce girls younger than me to be his slaves. Jasmine told me that privately, he talked about bestiality, like trying to have her do things with animals and kidnapping her. We were both very scared at this point, with it no longer being fun for either of us. But Wesley constantly was assuring the both of us privately that we were his favorite, and that made both of us continue, trying to one-up each other and win the prize. All of this eventually built up to the day that Wesley told Jasmine and I that he was coming through our town on business. I don't think that he ever told either of us what he did for a living, just that it involved him constantly driving alongside the east coast of our state. Wesley was determined to meet with the both of us. Me, having a very strict father who didn't even let me go to the mall for an hour without a chaperone or on school supervised field trips, knew that I would never be able to make that happen. My dad would ask too many questions about it. Jasmine, however, lived alone with her mom, who typically didn't really care where she was at any point. My fear of my dad was enough to trump even this guy's persuasion, but Jasmine eventually agreed to go and meet with this guy. Part of me was scared for her. Part of me was jealous. I knew that this would mean that she won our battle, but I was willing to concede. Thinking back on it, not meeting up with him is possibly one of the best choices I ever made. Jasmine, to this day, is so traumatized by what happened to her that day. She still hasn't revealed all the details to me. Bringing it up or talking about it makes her go into a panic attack. What she did tell me was that the two of them met at a local chain restaurant. He took her to some apartment, and she was with him for 10 hours, trapped, until eventually he got bored with her and took her home. She insists that she wasn't raped. I don't know if I fully believe her, but the way she tells it to me makes it seem that at the very least, she and him didn't have vaginal intercourse. All I know is that he did things to her that she won't speak of, and we share everything. I don't know why she never called the cops. I don't know why I never called the cops. She never got the license plate number or anything either. I think that we were both just scared of getting caught by our parents and getting into trouble, that the idea of calling the police was just out of the question for both of us. I know, stupid. After Jasmine's encounter with Wesley, neither of us ever spoke to him again, not on IMVU, Skype, or the phone. The prospect that he knew her home address scared us both, but as far as we know anyway, he never showed up there. Fast forward 4 years later, making me about 18. Neither Jasmine or I have talked to Wesley in years. I still would think about him and what happened to Jasmine frequently. She and I were both traumatized, especially her, and we were the only two who knew about this man and his actions. Then one day, my mom came home from the dollar store and told me that she met a man there who said that he knew me. For reference, my mom has very early onset dementia, and at this point, she wasn't thinking or acting as clearly as she would have been. He talked to her while she was checking out and helped her put away her things into her car. I was very confused, not really knowing who it could have been at first. Then she said, "He said his name was Wesley," and I froze. My heart felt like it was going to explode. She described him to me, and it sounded like it could have been him, but she said that he had shorter hair and a beard. I had only ever known one person in my life named Wesley at this point, but still held on to the hope that it wasn't him. I asked her if he said where he knew me from. She said that she didn't ask, but that he'd said that we were old friends, I pressed her with more questions, frantically, and she was very confused by them. Apparently, he'd help her put groceries in her car while talking about me and my schooling, and then he said goodbye to her and she'd left. I asked her if he knew how he knew her as my mom. She said that she didn't ask. My mom, man, thinking back, we should have seen some of these warning signs in her. I don't know how this man was able to identify my mother, or why he was in my town. I don't know why, so many years later, he not only still was interested in me, but interested enough in me to know who my mother was without me ever sending him a photo of my mom or telling him anything about her. I can only imagine he must have been stalking me or her, but I don't know how. I hope he didn't have my home address, but considering that I lived in an area that was very off the beaten path in the middle of nowhere, I don't know if he did. After my mom disclosed what school I went to, I wondered if he ever showed up there. I wonder if he got my mom's license plate number that day. Jasmine was still living at the same house he dropped her off at that night. Even then, I wonder if he paid her house any visits. I wonder if he ever saw us together. As it currently stands, I have never seen him. Jasmine's never seen him since that day they met up, and my mom never saw him again after that day at the store. Even after that encounter, I was too paralyzed with fear of what my dad would do to me to tell anyone about him, even though I knew that my family and I could be in danger. I know, I'm an absolute fool. It's too late now, I think, and I regret not doing anything every day of my life. It's one of my life's biggest regrets. Even if I wanted to try and do something later on, I don't actually know what could have been done. If he was stalking me, he's probably given up by now. I've moved houses several times since then, and now live in a different city. Jasmine also lives in a different city now. Still though, every now and then, every time I see a car parked too close to me, or a guy that even remotely looks like him near me, I freeze, and I start to wonder. I can't even hear the name Wesley or his last name now without getting flashbacks. I don't know whatever happened to him. I don't know what he did to my best friend. I don't know how he managed to find my mom 4 years later. I don't know how I am still safe, honestly, but I thank God. Wesley, wherever you are, let's not meet.